Xiao Yan's group's hearts shook when they heard Yao Lao's words. Their eyes looked to the front where a faint wind lightning sound was present. A couple of dozen seconds later, 3 black glows suddenly rushed over from the distance. The speed of the 3 black glows was extremely terrifying. Within a flash, they appeared 1,000 feet away. However, they suddenly appeared to have sensed something when they were just about to enter the mountain where Yao Lao was located. They immediately paused, and 3 dark, cold, and ruthless gazes shot over. They paused on the group on the mountain. Yao Chen? It is actually you. The 3 of them were stunned when they saw Yao Lao. A furious voice soon appeared. Xiao Yan's eyes observed the other party, while these 3 were exclaiming. The leader was a somewhat skinny figure. His face was dark and stern, and from the looks of it, he was the person who had made the bid at the trade fair earlier. There was another elder and a man, who appeared somewhat younger, behind him. Although the last man appeared young, both of his eyes revealed an age that was not any younger than the other 2 old demons. Other than the younger-looking man, whose appearance was a little better, the remaining 2 gave one a dark and chilly feeling. Moreover, the auras that were vaguely emitted from their bodies were quite terrifying. 3 he-demon ghosts, it has been a long time since we have met. Yao Lao placed his hands behind him and laughed. You are the person who had bid against the Olmi earlier? The skinny old man, who was the leader, glared at Yao Qian in a ruthless manner before he suddenly demanded. Yao Lao smiled after seeing Tian Hezi recover. He did not say any unnecessary words. Hand over the ancient map, TSK. How unexpected. The renowned Yao Zunjia, Yao Chun, on the continent is doing something like stopping someone and robbing treasure from them. Tian Hezi strangely laughed when he heard Yao Lao's words. Yao Lao smiled and spoke in an unconcerned manner. If it was someone else, I might have thought twice. Fortunately, it is the 3 of you. Therefore, I do not feel any mental burden. Other people might be considered humans, but I do not regard the few of you as such. Yao Chen, don't think that the 3 of us are afraid of you just because you have advanced to the Bansheng class. Back then, we were able to beat you until you fled being injured. We are still able to do so today. The brutal-looking Di Hezi spoke with a dark and cold voice. Why don't you give it a try? We will also be able to resolve our grudges from back then. Yao Lao grinned. He stomped his foot on the ground and his body appeared in front of those 3 in a ghost-like fashion. Monstrous Doqi suddenly surged out of his body, and the sky suddenly turned dark. Wild wind raged and whistled across the sky. The expressions of Tian Hezi's group changed when they saw Yao Lao stirring such a force, especially Tian Hezi's expression. Although he was only half a step away from the Bansheng class, he understood just how large this difference was. An intense battle was unavoidable if they wished to escape today. Bang! Yao Lao did not give the 3 of them any extra time. He clenched his hand and dark clouds surged from the sky as a 10,000-foot-large fire hand suddenly formed. After which, it explosively hurtled the Hezi trio. Attack together! A dark, vicious expression flashed across the eyes of Tian Hezi's group when they saw Yao Lao attacking as he pleased. They let out a furious roar as Doqi surged from their bodies. After which, they turned into 3,000-foot-large light pillars that ruthlessly collided with the enormous flame hand. Bang! The 2 collided, and a frightening wind ripple surged out in all directions. The enormous mountains around were shaken by that energy ripple until they burst apart. As a frightening wind swept apart, Tian Hezi and his 2 brothers' footsteps staggered. They hurriedly took 2 steps back. A muffled voice was emitted from Tian Hezi's throat. He had suffered a small loss in this hurried cooperation of theirs. The strength of this old fellow is so terrifying. The 3 of them were unable to gain an advantage despite joining hands. The expressions of Tian Hezi's group changed. Their eyes flickered. Suddenly, They turned to Xiao Yan's group on the mountain and sinisterly said, "Third brother, those three are together with this old fellow. Capture them. Remember that they must live." The three of them would definitely enter into a bitter battle if they were to fight Yao Lao. Hence, it was better to capture Xiao Yan's group and use them as hostages. Only then would they be able to successfully escape. Ren He looked into the distance when he heard this. An evil smile slid over his face as he nodded and said, "Give me a couple of minutes." His feet stepped on empty air after his voice sounded. He rushed in the direction of Xiao Yan's group. Yao Lao frowned when he saw this. He was just about to intervene when Tian He and Di He suddenly unleashed the Do Qi within their bodies until their limits, after which they unleashed a tricky attack from all directions. "You are seeking death." Yao Lao's eyes turned chilly when he saw this. Tian He and the other two could barely fight him with their combined strength, yet they dared to separate. They were really committing suicide. He was not too worried about Xiao Yan's group. Although Ren He was a 6-change peak Do Zun, it would be impossible for him to finish off Xiao Yan's group within a short period of time. Murderous desire surged within Yao Lao's heart. The space around him swiftly became distorted, after which he exchanged blows with Tian He again, and a frightening energy ripple once again spread across the sky. While Tian He and his brother were pestering Yao Lao, Ren He appeared a short distance in front of Xiao Yan's group with lightning-like speed. His heated eyes suddenly paused on Kai Lin and the little fairy doctor's well-proportioned and lovely figures. "Ha ha! It is unexpected that I can meet two exquisite beauties. This is the greatest gain of this trip." Ren He's eyes were incomparably hot as they looked at Kai Lin and the little fairy doctor. The appearance and demeanor of these two women was not what those meat cauldrons within the Cloud Rain sect could compare with. They had surpassed everything. Lewd thoughts immediately began to grow wildly within his heart once he saw them. Kai Lin and little fairy doctor's pretty face gradually turned icy as they sensed Ren He's lewd eyes. Do Qi gathered with lightning-like speed in their hands. "He, die brat. Leave the beauties behind." Ren He licked his lips. A punch was thrown toward Xiao Yan from across a distance. A frightening sonic boom was formed from his fist, and it rumbled across the sky. Bang! Xiao Yan's face was void of expression. His feet abruptly stomped on the ground. The mountain in front of him suddenly blasted apart as 100-foot-large hot lava cylinder shot out. It poured down from the sky and stirred clusters of flames on the mountain top. Xiao Yan took the opportunity to glance at Yao Lao's battle in the distance after having blocked Ren He's attack. At this moment, Tian He and his brother were in a situation where they were completely overwhelmed. From the looks of the battle, they would not be able to endure for long. "Who?" Xiao Yan softly sighed in his heart. Both of his hands formed numerous complicated hand seals, and a clan tattoo surfaced between his brows. With its appearance, Xiao Yan's aura soared from the peak of an 8-star Do Zun to a 3-change peak Do Zun. Ren He was a 6-change peak Do Zun expert. He was much stronger than Shui Zunjia. Hence, Xiao Yan had no choice but to be cautious since his opponent was considered the strongest Do Zun among those he had met and fought. "Brat, you do indeed have some skills. However, the old me dislikes those who enjoy multiple women. You can rest assured that the old me will take good care of these two beauties after you die." Ren He let out a sharp laugh after sensing Xiao Yan's soaring aura. Bang! Kai Lin's face turned extremely cold when she heard Ren He's obscene words. Her lovely figure leaped into the sky and dark clouds churned. Her figure turned into a 10,000-foot-long, 7-colored heaven-swallowing python. Her enormous body was hidden within the dark cloud, appearing like a dragon. Oh, this beauty's actual body is the extinct 7-colored heaven-swallowing python. Haha, how delicious. The old me likes it. Ren He was startled when he saw Kai Lin turn into a seven-colored heaven-swallowing python, but he soon let out a loud laugh. Crash! Ren He's loud laugh had just sounded when a colorful thunderbolt suddenly smashed down from the dark clouds. After having transformed, Kai Lin's aura had also soared. She was equivalent to an 8-star Do Zun human expert. However, Ren He merely waved his sleeve in the face of such an attack. A wave of majestic Do Qi forcefully vanquished her attack. Woeful poison body, activate. The little fairy doctor's face was icy cold. Her hand seals changed, and her beautiful long black hair suddenly turned silvery white. A Do Qi glow that contained a fatal poison rushed toward Ren He with lightning-like speed. Huh? This beauty has the woeful poison body? Ha ha, all of you are exquisite. Ren He once again laughed out loud as he sensed the lethal poison within the pillar, but he did not appear relaxed. His body hurriedly pulled back as he dodged this lethal poison pillar. The woeful poison body was too intense. It would be somewhat troublesome if he touched even a minuscule amount. These two beauties are really ruthless. One is a seven-colored heaven-swallowing python, while the other has a woeful poison body. With the both of them joining hands, an ordinary peak Do Zun would really be no match for them. However, they have unfortunately met this elderly self. Ren He laughed in a strange manner. The lewd smile on his face became even denser, but he was just about to attack when his expression suddenly changed. A terrifying energy ripple that caused a fear to appear in his heart suddenly unfurled from the distance. A shock flashed across Ren He's eyes when he sensed this energy ripple that could destroy everything. He hurriedly raised his head and saw 5 clusters of flame suspended in front of the black-clothed young man on the mountain top. Other than the last type of flame, the remaining 4 types of flames caused his expression to drastically change. 4 types of heavenly flames? Xiao Yan saw the drastic change on Ren He's face, but his expression did not change. A dense, cold smile was lifted on the corner of his mouth. This was the first time he had added the life-transforming flame, after having refined the bone-chilling flame. 4 types of heavenly flame and 1 fake heavenly flame. It was a 5-colored angry Buddha lotus flame that Xiao Yan had never used before. This brat is really mysterious. He only possesses the strength of someone at the peak of an 8-star Do Zun, yet he is able to unleash such a frightening strength. Ren He's expression was volatile as he stared at the flames churning in Xiao Yan's hands, and a great wave rose within his heart. However, this shock quickly turned into a dark ruthlessness. He suddenly threw a punch, and the space in front of him emitted a crashing sound as it burst apart. A dozens of foot-large dark black spatial line appeared. That spatial crack became a black, ruthless, poisonous snake that rushed toward Xiao Yan with lightning-like speed. Bang! An enormous spatial crack quickly spread across the sky, but it was still a couple hundred feet away from Xiao Yan when a couple of colorful thunderbolts suddenly smashed down from the sky. They ruthlessly struck the spreading crack, causing the spatial crack to pause momentarily before it quickly exploded apart. The expression in Ren He's eyes sank when his attack was blocked. He lifted his eyes to look at the enormous 7-colored heaven-swallowing python in the sky and strangely laughed. Beauty, since you insist on intervening, the old me shall finish off the both of you first. Ren He's body flashed after he uttered those words. He immediately turned into a ray of light that shot toward the 7-colored heaven-swallowing python in the sky. A punch was immediately thrown ruthlessly forward, and a low and deep sonic boom was formed as it whizzed toward the Kai Lin. Chi! Kai Lin's 1,000-foot-long tail was suddenly swung when she saw Ren He's attack. The frightening strength caused space itself to tear apart. It ruthlessly collided with the powerful palm wind, and a frightening storm swept across the sky. The seven-colored heaven-swallowing python, which Kai Lin had turned into, was forced back thousands of feet. He, beauty, you are no match for this elderly self. Ren He lewdly laughed after forcing back Kai Lin with a punch. He was just about to turn around when many sharp rushing wind sounds appeared beside his ear, and dochi pillars with lethal poisons trickily pierced toward a couple of fatal spots on his body. Ren He frowned when he sensed this attack. His feet stepped on empty air, and the space behind him distorted into something like a metal wall. The dochi pillars collided with it and emitted clear clang sounds. Two beauties. Why do you need to fight all out for this brat? The both of you will definitely enjoy yourselves by following the old me. Ren He laughed, but before he could finish speaking, he saw Xiao Yan press the 5 types of flames together in the distance. His face involuntarily twitched. This madman. He is actually merging the heavenly flames? The look in Ren He's eyes was altered. Although he didn't know why this brat was doing something so crazy, his instincts told him that he would end up dying if he allowed this brat to continue. He immediately rotated his body and ceased bothering with Kai Lin and the little fairy doctor. He turned into a ray of light that shot toward Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, be careful. The little fairy doctor hurriedly issued a reminder when she saw Ren He move. She also hurriedly moved her body and followed. Xiao Yan lifted his head when he sensed the intense sound of rushing wind blow toward him. Xiao Yan looked at Ren He's dense dark face as he headed his way. A cold laugh sounded from Ren He. Green-red bone wings spread swiftly behind Xiao Yan, and a silver glow flashed under his feet. His body appeared 1,000 feet away, causing Ren He to miss. What frightening speed! Ren He felt shock materialize in his heart when he saw Xiao Yan dodge him in such a relaxed manner. Before he could continue chasing Xiao Yan, 2 extremely ferocious attacks were launched from behind him. Those attacks came from Kai Lin and the little fairy doctor, who had followed him over. Ren He did not dare to allow these 2, who had joined hands, to randomly attack him. He had no choice but to turn around. Dochi surged out from his body as he ruthlessly collided with the 2 attacks behind him. Bang! The 3 of them engaged in an intense battle. Thunder-like explosions resounded across the sky as wave after wave of frightening force spread like floodwater. They shook the sky until space became distorted. Moan! Qiao Lin and the little fairy doctor emitted a groan from their mouths when they violently collided with Ren He. Their bodies were forced back. Although their bodies' constitutions were different from others, there was too wide a gap between Ren He and them. It was difficult for them to win even if they joined hands. Although they did not possess the strength to be victorious, the 2 of them continued to persevere. They completely ignored the injuries that had appeared in their bodies from the counterattack. Their bodies had just stabilized when many lightning-like attacks continued to strike Ren He. They caused Ren He to react with chaotic responses. While their battle had become extremely heated, Tian He's and Di He's faces had become a little pale as they fought Yao Lao. The 2 of them together were no match for Yao Lao. If they weren't great at cooperating, their defenses would have long since been breached. Even though this was the case, it was obvious that they were unable to endure for long. Third brother, what are you doing? Why are you still showing mercy to ladies at this moment? Are you seeking death? Tian He and his brother turned paler after they were ruthlessly forced back by Yao Lao once again. Their eyes glanced into the distance as they involuntarily cried out. None of them had expected Ren He to be held back by 2 ladies whose strength did not exceed that of an 8-star dozun. The pressure around Tian He and his brother suddenly increased after their furious voices sounded. 1,000 feet large flame fist fell from the sky and ruthlessly smashed into them. Although they had Dochi protecting them, that frightening wind still struck the both of them until they spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and flew backwards. This is bad. Big Brother's group cannot endure any longer. Ren He's heart sank when he saw Tian He and his brother spit out blood and withdraw. Since I am unable to capture that brat, I shall capture a beauty as a hostage. Otherwise, we will be finished today. This thought lingered within Ren He's heart. He gave up on capturing Xiao Yan as his palm shattered an enormous, colorful thunderbolt, after which his large hand suddenly grabbed at the little fairy doctor. The space around her instantly stilled. Bang! The little fairy doctor's expression changed when she sensed space still around her. Doqi surged from her body, causing the solid space around her to tremble, but she was not able to break free. Beauty, the old me shall bring you with me this time around. Ren He's figure flashed away while the little fairy doctor was attempting to shatter the distorted space and retreat. He appeared in front of the little fairy doctor and gave her a lewd smile. His large hand reached toward her. Woo! Kai Lin in the sky felt her heart sink when she saw this person give up on targeting Xiao Yan. Instead, he had decided to capture the little fairy doctor. She hurriedly activated the thunderbolt strength within the dark clouds and shot them toward Ren He from all directions. Ren He merely clenched his hand when these attacks came down, and they were completely shattered by a distortion in space. Beauty, you are mine. Ren He let out a strange laugh after shattering all the thunderbolts. His eyes were extremely heated as he looked at the expression on the little fairy doctor's face. His hand was about to grab her shoulder. It is too early for you to be happy. As Ren He's large hand was about to grab the little fairy doctor, a cold laugh suddenly reverberated behind him. The Ren He's face changed when he heard this voice. He suddenly turned around and his eyes shrank. Exquisite basin-sized 5-colored fire lotus cut through the air and rushed his way. This fire lotus contained 5 colors and fire seedlings continued to rise around it. A frightening extermination force emanated from it. Even Ren He felt his limbs become ice cold because of this annihilation force. Such a might was comparable to some Tian-class middle-level Do skills. Thick earth bell. Ren He's limbs might have been icy cold, but he did not lose his reasoning. His hand seals rapidly changed as Doqi surged from his body in all directions, and an enormous bell quickly appeared. His body quickly hid within it. Sizzle! An enormous snake tail rushed down from the sky when Ren He used his defensive Do skill. It swiftly wrapped around the little fairy doctor and pulled her away. If you wish to find a beauty, you can go and find one in hell. Xiao Yan's expression was dark and cold as he glanced at Ren He and the large bell. Ren He's eyes had revealed a panic. A cold smile was lifted on the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth as the bone wings on his back were flapped. His body withdrew with lightning-like speed. At the same time, the seal formed by his hands changed. Explode! After this word was spat out from Xiao Yan's mouth, the 5-colored fire lotus suddenly paused next to the bell shape. It subsequently exploded in front of Ren He's shocked eyes. Bang! The entire place trembled because of this explosion. All the mountains within a 10,000-foot radius emitted a boom as they were blasted into dust. In an instant, the mountain range had turned into a desert. Sand and rocks flew while smoke permeated the air. A 5-colored fire lotus. No, this could only be described as a 4.5-colored angry Buddha lotus flame. Was this terrifying? Forget about Ren He. Under this frightening explosion, even an expert with Tian He's strength would be turned into nothing in an instant. A thick dust spread across the sky. The surrounding mountains vanished in the blink of an eye. The area within a 10,000-foot radius turned into flatland. Even a large rock did not exist. The enormous heaven-swallowing python shook in the distant sky. It quickly turned into an enchanting figure. With a wave of her sleeve, A wild wind blew and suppressed the sand and dust permeating over air around her. As the sand and dust fell, a black-clothed skinny figure appeared within Kailin's and the little fairy doctor's sight. Both ladies heaved a sigh of relief within their hearts when they saw that Xiao Yan was fine. Who? Xiao Yan wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. This was the first time that he had unleashed an angry Buddha lotus flame created from 5 types of flames. Its might had exceeded his expectations. Of course, its exhaustion was also quite frightening. Even with his current strength, his body still felt empty after unleashing this fire lotus. Xiao Yan let out a long sigh from his mouth. He lifted his head, and his eyes swept over the spot where Ren He had been located earlier. Currently, that spot was completely empty. There was no sign of anyone present. Ren He's aura had disappeared with his figure. Nothing was left, and he seemed to vanish from this world, killing an elite 6-change peak Do Zun with just one strike. This was the might of the merger of 4 types of heavenly flames and a fake heavenly flame. One could imagine just how frightening Xiao Yan's strength would be if he could truly merge 5 types of heavenly flames. It was likely that even a true elite Bansheng would be turned into nothing by that one strike. Are you all right? Kailin and the little fairy doctor quickly appeared beside Xiao Yan. They hurriedly inquired when they saw his somewhat pale face. I'm fine. Xiao Yan took out a medicinal pill and stuffed it into his mouth. He shook his head. The exhaustion of an angry Buddha lotus flame soared each time a flame was added. Hence, even though his strength had rose, he still felt it was difficult to use this fire lotus. The frightening activity that was created by Xiao Yan was naturally sensed by Yao Lao's opponents in the distance. That terrifying extermination strength from earlier caused even Yao Lao to feel a palpitation in his heart. The strength that was formed from the merger of heavenly flames was really too terrifying. However, the only one in the world who could perfectly control heavenly flames, which naturally resisted each other, was Xiao Yan, since he practiced the flame mantra and also possessed an extremely powerful spiritual strength. Third brother, Tian He and his brother were stunned by this unexpected situation. They looked around the massive plains below as their bodies involuntarily shuddered. Their eyes were incomparably frightened as they looked at the black-clothed young man in the sky. Even they were unable to create such a frightening destructive force. Yet this brat, who seemed to be a peak 8-star Do Zun, was able to achieve such a force? This brat is too mysterious. He swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he muttered to himself, "Where is third brother?" The corner of Tian He's mouth twitched. He quickly recovered and hurriedly swept his eyes around, but he was shocked to discover that he was unable to sense Ren He's aura. It seems that he has been blasted apart by this brat until nothing remained. He's voice was filled with disbelief. He had never expected Ren He, whose strength had reached a 6-change peak Do Zun, to end up meeting such a fate because of this brat. A shock surged into Tian He's eyes when he heard this. Even if he used all his strength, it was impossible to destroy Ren He until nothing remained. That brat. Let's quickly leave. A dense fear finally surged into Tian He's heart at this moment. His eyes were afraid as they looked at Xiao Yan in the distance. If Xiao Yan were to throw another one of those damn things over, he was not confident that he could survive such a frightening explosion. He lost the courage to continue battling, and with a low cry, he turned around and fled. He nodded when he heard Tian He's words. Remaining behind at this moment was suicidal. Will you be able to leave? However, an elderly laughter suddenly resounded across the sky when those two were planning to escape amid this chaos. Soon after, a lifelike giant flame hand was once again formed in the sky, after which it shuttled through air within lightning-like speed as it grabbed at Tian He and his brother. Yao Chun, You should not go overboard. Tian Hezi viciously let out a screech when he saw Yao Lao attacking again. At the same time, both he and Di Hezi hurriedly turned around. Powerful dou qi erupted from their palms and ruthlessly collided with the enormous flame palm. It doesn't matter if the both of you die. Yao Lao coldly laughed. His attack became even more vicious. With a wave of his sleeve, his large flame hand forcefully shattered all their dou skills and ruthlessly slammed into their bodies. Bang! Tian Hezi and his brother were like cannonballs as they ruthlessly flew after suffering such a heavy attack. They forcefully landed on the ground and formed 2,000-foot-wide pits. Grug! Tian Hezi's and his brother's faces were ghastly while they stayed in the large pits. A dense blood trace hung on the corner of their mouths. Their clothes had been shattered at this moment. Their eyes became extremely vicious as they stared at Yao Lao's group in the sky, but they did not charge forward. Their bodies moved as they endured their serious injuries and separated, fleeing in two different directions. Yao Lao slammed his foot down after seeing the two flee. His body seemed to teleport as he appeared in front of Di Hezi. He grabbed with his large hand and space itself sealed around Di Hezi's body. The old me will drag you along even if I die. Di Hezi's eyes were blood red and ferocious as they stared at Yao Lao even if his body could not move. The dou qi in his body became chaotic. This fellow was planning on self-destructing at this moment. Yao Lao was cold and indifferent as he stared at Di Hezi. His palm was as swift as lightning as it smashed into Di Hezi's chest. A destructive force surged into Di Hezi's body like floodwater, and an instant later, it destroyed all of his life force. The chaotic dou qi within Di Hezi's body swiftly disappeared at this instant, and the life within his eyes quickly vanished. He slowly lowered his head. This old ghost, whose immoral reputation was once renowned across the Central Plains, had finally died today. Yao Lao took Di Hezi's storage ring after killing him. He tossed it toward Xiao Yan's group, after which his eyes were indifferent as they followed the direction Tian Hezi had fled. He informed Xiao Yan's group in a low voice, "Check if the ancient map is inside. I will chase that fellow." Yao Lao's figure vanished the moment his words sounded. His aura chased after Tian Hezi with great speed. Xiao Yan caught the storage ring after watching Yao Lao's figure disappeared. He spread his other hand, and another storage ring was revealed. It naturally belonged to Ren He, CD. Di Hezi and Ren He were currently dead, and the spiritual imprints on their storage rings were extremely vulnerable. Xiao Yan swept over the spiritual imprints, and they were removed, after which his spiritual strength examined the rings, and his brows were knit. "It's not in them?" Kailin asked after seeing Xiao Yan's knit brows. Perhaps it is with Tian Hezi. He is, after all, the big brother." Xiao Yan shook his head. He immediately clenched his hand, and a flickering golden scroll suddenly appeared in his hand. "What is this?" Chao Lin and the little fairy doctor were startled when they saw this somewhat familiar scroll. The King Kong glass body that had been auctioned at the trade fair. It is unexpected that Di Hezi had gotten his hands on it. It has really benefited us. Xiao Yan held the scroll and involuntarily laughed. This King Kong glass body was a Tian-class low-level dou skill. Earlier, Xiao Yan had been interested in it, but he had ultimately not bid for it. He even felt a little regretful afterwards. Unexpectedly, this thing was delivered into his hands. We did not spend any money, but we ended up obtaining a lot of benefits. The little fairy doctor covered her mouth and softly laughed. These three people had used women as meat cauldrons to train. They deserve such a fate, Kailin indifferently remarked. Xiao Yan nodded. These three fellows had done all sorts of evil things in their lives and had ruined an unknown number of ladies. It was retribution for them to end up with such a fate. I wonder how things are on teacher's side. Xiao Yan lifted his head. His eyes looked in the direction where Yao Lao had disappeared as he wondered. Relax, given Yao Lao's strength, Tian Hezi will not be able to pull off any tricks, the little fairy doctor replied. Xiao Yan nodded. He was just about to speak when the rushing sound of wind was transmitted from the horizon, and a familiar figure hurried over with lightning-like speed. The familiar figure appeared in front of Xiao Yan and the two ladies within a couple of flashes. That figure was Yao Lao, who had chased after Tian Hezi earlier. Haha, it is really enjoyable this time around. Yao Lao loudly laughed. He could not resist the joy within his heart the moment he appeared. These three he-demon ghosts had been enemies with him since a long ago. He had gotten rid of a blotch in his heart by being able to finish them off. Teacher? Xiao Yan smiled and asked. Yes, Yao Lao knew what Xiao Yan was thinking. He immediately smiled and extended his hand as an ancient map fragment appeared in it. It clearly looked like the final map fragment. Xiao Yan heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the ancient map fragment. His hands trembled as he took this ancient map fragment. He had searched for all the map fragments for over a decade in order to gather them all. It was really the case of the heavens not letting those who truly put in effort down. He had gathered all of the map fragments. Purifying demonic lotus flame. You will ultimately be mine. An extreme excitement surged into Xiao Yan's eyes as he looked at the ancient map fragment in his hand. D has to be really well made. I've been trying to figure out why Xiao Yan has been ignoring his opponent's storage rings for so long. It's like the author forgets about them.